past achievements, celebrate the present, and strategize for the future of the corporate world through HR. With further ado, I want to first applaud the continuous and dedicated efforts of each and every one of you sitting here for bringing the corporate HR to what it is today. A huge round of applause, guys. So Keka started way back in 2015 as a bootstrapped entity. We wanted to understand and leverage the power of HRs and make organizations understand this power more than anything. And for us, employee experience is over everything. We strongly believe that customer experience plus employee experience gives rise to 10 times the growth in any organization. And you must be questioning the fact as to why we started these conclaves, correct? Being an HRMS, why are we doing these conclaves? We started these conclaves to help organizations understand the power that human resources holds and what impact it can create for them to scale. And with that, I would like you to meet the mastermind behind all these conclaves, behind the reason why we are all sitting here today meeting everyone. So please put your hands together for Mr. Barun Malik, the first person who believed in Keka and the impact it could create and the wave that it could create across the world. Please welcome Mr. Barun Malik, guys.
Hi everyone. So I will take just 2 minutes of your time because it's a long session. When an employee joins an organization, he wants to create an impact. And when an employer starts an organization, he wants to create an impact. So at the same time, there are two different kinds of people who wanted to create an impact, a long-lasting impact for the community, for the society. So now, let's coin a term, CX plus EX is equal to 10x growth. The customer experience of a business, which is primarily taken care by the employer, the CEOs of the organization, and the employee experience, the EX part of the business. So both together, when combined, resonate together in a more structured way, then there is definitely a chance of a 10x growth. Why we are here and why we are running this community-led programs. So one of the main reasons when we started this particular HR conclave, and this is the 13th edition of it, is to first make people who are part of EX10 sit together, discuss together, at least meet each other. So main agenda behind this whole conference is for you guys first. For you guys, where you guys can meet, talk, greet, appreciate each other's work. Because there will be a time when, and it's the way technology is booming, the whole concept around the whole digital transformation of HR space is now we need to stop. We need to start talking about digital intelligence. We need to move beyond digital HR transformation to digital intelligence. And this communities and this setups is there to make us learn more from you guys, what kind of things you guys require, how we can help you guys. And that's where this whole conclave came into picture. So I'll not take more time. Thank you everyone for coming here. Have a great day.
Moving on, we have a CHRO panel discussion, and that must be evident on the agendas that you have in front of you all.
Let's give ourselves a very big applause. I'll tell you why. First, an energetic applause to Keka and all my fellow panel speakers over here. So how many of you can define HR before we get into what actually this whole discussion is about? Nobody? I'll count 5 because I have a ticker going on here, so I have a time limit for everything. Batao. Don't know? We are going to today talk about employee engagement. When I get into my CEO's office and the leadership team, the first question they ask is, what is it that you have? Yes or no? So one of my previous bosses used to make comedy, and he used to tell to the CEO, dude, look at it, HR, morning when I come to office, I come with a high risk. Why are you all laughing, yeah? And evening when I go home, I'll be human remains. All right. Now this is what the whole challenge is about. Today we are going to discuss about employee engagement, post and pre-pandemic. So how many of you know the term FOP? FOP. We all know FOC, which is free of cost. But what is FOP? Fear of? A little bit to the context that I just now explained you. Nair. So, we all started about 2 to 3 years back with what is called as fear of pandemic, FOP. Post the VUCA, FOP was a term that rocked the industry, and all of us went back to discuss with our spouses, with our in-laws, with our children, with our CEOs, CFOs, whatnot, and the IT teams to get ourselves engrossed into running the organization. Do we agree to that? Right, that was the reason why I asked you all to clap for ourselves, because we survived. But acid test continues even today. Every morning at 10 o'clock, my CEO asks, Macha, what is your employee engagement plan? How do you curtail the attrition? How do you bring the branding into the organization? It goes on with a comma and comma and comma, but never a full stop. So we all live in that HR terminology of high risk always. I have a set of experts here, and when you look at them, how do they look? Why? The very basic ingredient of an employee engagement goes exactly with 5 of us seated here. If someone tells me how do we all look, I'll take you for a dinner, no matter which restaurant, hotel. I'll count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Right, let me tell you, ask you. If you talk to your son or a daughter or a new employee in the organization, does he or she hear to you? Why? They don't, right? The reason why they don't is because they are of a different generation, and that's what we are. Me and Stanley are baby boomers. Sorry, are we baby boomers? No. We have, here Karthik, who is a Gen X, and we have the millennials. So the employee engagement, the very basic ingredients is our generation of workforce we have in the organization. And what Simon Sinek says is, when people are financially invested, they want a return. But when people are emotionally invested, they want what? They want to contribute. It is that discussion that we are all going to engage now, and we will start off with the very basic sort of questions, and we will engage this whole panel of 3 different generations. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you. So I'll start off with Stanley, who's a senior most, young and handsome guy. He has 30,000 people working in his organization called Hexaware. Does he look young and handsome? Yes. Thank you, sir. Your day is made. Sir, I'll start the question to you with, a very basic question. What are the hacks that can help in what we call as surging or increasing the employee engagement quotient in the organization?
Okay. So one of the basic hacks that I can look at, to increase the employee engagement quotient is, post-pandemic. I come from whatever the old generation, right? And when people come to office, a quick one is when people come to office, we expect them to sign off by 5:30, 6 o'clock, 9 hours, 15 minutes, 8 hours, whatever. But now we have seen a trend where, it's kind of a panic productivity kind of a situation where people are scared to switch off their laptops. So no end to their working hours, right? So that is where the engagement falls down. We think people are kind of productive, or people are logged onto the laptops and the productivity is high, but no. So productivity is actually, it's going down. So one of the key aspects that we, as an organization, that we try to measure is, when you are at your job, how involved are you? So there are certain metrics or certain tools that we have kind of, as an organization, we have engaged in. So these kind of tools, they actually kind of not monitor, but yes, they talk to the employees and then, try to gauge the engagement levels.
Thank you, thank you. Karthik, your thoughts on this particular aspect of how do we, bring that booster into employee engagement, or hacks that you have seen between the war veterans like me and Stanley versus the Gen X set of people?
See, I try to bring across two perspectives over here. One, now we are in the cusp of whether we are seeing the employee as a commodity or we are seeing them as an asset to an organization. One. Number two, is the organization also sees the employee as a commodity or not? Today, unfortunately, there are a lot of conversations. Why do people keep switching the organizations? Is because if they don't see that sense of belongingness as a truly human individuals, they will definitely see that organization as a commodity. Second thing, as per the research, 3 years back, what were the top 3 global HR challenges across 29 industries, across 5 continents? It is leadership, change management, and compensation. Today also everybody says the reason for leaving is compensation. But technically today it is leadership, change management, and HR effectiveness. And 3 years from now, it is leadership, change management, and organization effectiveness. What you see here, the pattern is, classic example, different generations, so leadership dynamics are bound to happen. Change management is bound to happen. What is changing is, how is the HR is getting aligned to the business? We don't understand that. We don't understand the employee because they are the truly human employees on the ground. They need that acknowledgement because we are dealing with the different multi-generations. And people of my generation or little earlier generation or maybe the Gen Zs need the instant gratification at this point in time. That instant gratification can be a basic classic acknowledgement over the mail, copying multiple people, they feel very happy because we are in the high risk environment right now.
Thank you. Richa, your thoughts?
So, so two parts to it. One is, like you very rightly mentioned, Dr. Ram, the multi-generational workforce that we have at workplace at this point of time. And due to that, I think it's very important to bring in an element of personalization in engagement, which means today, what matters to X generation does not matter to Y, and what matters to millennials may not matter to the other generation. So how much customization and personalization that you can bring into engagement is critical. And for that, the HR teams need to understand employees, their businesses very closely, gather insights, data, analytics hence becomes extremely crucial. So that's one part of it. The other is, if I were to just go back to your question on a hack, I think pre-pandemic flexibility, work flexibility, I don't think was anywhere in the top 2-3 requirements or asks from employee, right? But today, clearly it's the number one ask from employees. Flexibility at workplace is something that every organization is still trying to figure out, right? What is the right balance between physical workplace versus how much of it can it be, hybrid models, work from home? What is that balance which really brings you to the right levels of productivity? I think that's the hack. And if an organization can crack that, the engagement levels definitely go up.
If you permit me, Ram,
Yeah,
in
go ahead,
extension to what just said, the other aspect is now today it's no more well-being, it is mental health. That is what is predominantly playing the critical factor. Because today we are dealing with the employees over the Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Meets, somewhere that human touch is slowly getting deteriorated. And many people are hesitant to come to office and work. Mental health is becoming a critical factor in the organization culture. Sorry.
Viraj?
So, my perspective is that, and I know the question was, what is the hack to boost employee engagement? I think the first part to it is actually knowing which cohort or whether you want to boost in the first place. I think, like some of you all mentioned, today the world is different in the sense that the willingness to engage is selective. People work remotely because they like working remotely. People expect or are comfortable having a certain level of distance from a culture, from a community, from their teams. that keep them productive. And so, similar to what Richa said, I think it's important to understand that you're not hitting a wall and forcing people into engagement. And if I were to be really hyper specific about a hack, I just think the biggest hack that you can use once you've kind of identified that there are and actually accepted that there will be people who do not want to engage, and you don't want to kind of force them into it and they're happy and your goal is still met, whether it's via engagement or via deliberate kind of exclusion, respectfully, the goal is still met. And so after that, I think the biggest hack is that we have seen and that I believe in is decentralizing it to team leaders to own that time, own that engagement with them. Because once you do that, it automatically becomes influenced. And like anything that you want to do, and and as a company gets larger and larger, creating influence centrally, your one person or central team is near impossible. So you need leaders to be bought in to the idea of engagement, and you need them to be respectful of the people in their team and the level of engagement they're comfortable with. And once they are aware of that, you need them to be able to influence the right cohort within their team who are meaningful, who are probably a meaningful amount to actually block that time and engage, and not worry about the fear of that productivity they may be missing out on. So for me, my biggest hack is decentralizing it.
Thank you. It's wonderful. I can say it's a sort of a rebel thought that you're giving at the end of all this, three different verses of it, decentralizing. That is something, a very interesting aspect. But one of the next questions, which is contrary to what you're telling us, decentralizing, is something that we all, all of us who are gray-haired, bald guys, we all saw movies called, The Good, Bad and Ugly. Where Eagles Dare. The Dirty Dozen. Do we all remember that? McCanna's Gold. How many of you remember that? Right? The reason why I'm bringing these films is, these were the films, the Guns of Navarone, the Forsten from Navarone. Those of you who have the habit of reading books, Frederick Forsyth, if you read to that, you'll be surprised, because those entire set of series of war movies spoke about not victory, but about fostering a team that's going to be the knockout team. The guerrilla warfares. These talk about fostering team who come from different backgrounds. The next question that we have, or puzzle that we have in front of us, how do I, as HR leader in the organization, foster team behavior into the workforce? So I'll randomly now start with Richa, then come to warmonks like others. Okay, Richa, your thought.
Yeah, sure. So I think fostering team culture, fostering communities again. The entire landscape of how the workforce is distributed now is very different, which means today you have a certain group which could be coming into work. There are teams which are working hybrid. So how do you really build in interventions where you are able to bring different teams in different cohorts or different groups really together? So that is very critical. And then again, understanding what is important to them, right? So how do you really build digital communities, right? Because it is going to be a mix of physical versus hybrid. So how do you really bring in digital communities in? How do you bring in people with different interests in? And interest may not necessarily be work interest, right? Because I think there is always a lot of questioning around productivity and performance and appraisals, right? So to kickstart, how do you really bring groups together with common interests, really, build that bond? Because that really breaks the ice and takes them to the next level of community at work.
Thank you for those insights. Hybrid and digital community is something I picked up. Your thoughts, Viraj?
So I think the biggest factor in my eyes about fostering a community is not so much the cultivating an existing team's just overall morale and motivations and community, feeling of community, but I think being able to, as an organization and as a team, and therefore trickle down as an individual, being able to identify who we wish to be as people at that particular organization, what that organization stands for. And the framework that we create around the entry of new folks into a community, which means how we hire, like that kind of translates to how you hire into a team, how you hire into an organization, will, I think, is easily one of the factors for me that drastically affects your ability to foster that community, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure in the first place. So I think setting up your team and your organization for success, so that you understand that you are getting people that align with who you are as an organization, is the fundamental foundation of it. And the second one is, once they're in, is using is kind of creating an environment where you are humanizing everybody. It's not just about meeting KPIs or KRAs or whatever you want to call it. It's about actually humanizing them through conversations. It's about doing regular things that are non-work related, whether it's having lunch, whether it's talking about your day, whether it's starting your meetings with a simple "how are you" and so on and so forth. So that feeling of rapport automatically creates a feeling of comfort. And when you've broken the barrier of comfort, you automatically break the barrier of interaction and engagement, and you've humanized each other. And once you've humanized each other, you have more liberty and higher chances of success with the way that you engage with them, because now they're comfortable with you, they align with your principles, they align with your values, and your engagement activities that you run automatically hit off on a great stepping stone. So that's my take.
Thank you. Wonderful. Frameworks, rapport, comfort and humanizing. Very nice terms and the real DNA of an organization. Thank you, sir. From your side, Karthik.
So from where my fellow colleague left up, humanization. How many of us know there is a Gallup Strength Finders? Okay. How many of you all have taken your Gallup Strength Finders? Okay. Now, most of us, we land up talking during a performance appraisal or during the employee feedback. We talk about what employee is not good at. Let me tell you, I have taken my Gallup Strength Finders. My 32nd strength is empathy. I'm a HR professional for 23 years. My empathy is 32. And my very first strength is strategy. Okay. So now, whoever manager, whenever they talk to me and they say, there should be an empathy in you. Okay. Now it never can come in my top 5 strengths. It will be maximum probably in my top, it will be 25 to 34 only. So there's no point talking, Karthik, you don't have empathy. Please work now, whichever the organization I was and I am right now, I make it a point that I get to know what are my team top 5 strengths are. First thing I do that. Second thing what I do it is see the patterns which are common in my team members. Then I know what are the common strengths that everybody possesses, what are the unique ones. Once I know that, then I know how to capitalize each of their potential to get the maximization of their work onto the ground and what is the creativity it can be done through. Then a person starts believing that there is one, encouragement is there, sense of belongingness is there, and sense of the decision making is being empowered on them with the freedom. And constantly I keep pushing them, asking only one thing. Have you been complacent on your strength, or you have unleashed your strength to the next level? If you have done it, then you don't need an appraisal discussion with me. You have not done it, then please go back and revisit. That's all how I like to see and how I do it at my workplace.
Thank you, Karthik. Wonderful. You pulled into the entire world of psychometrics. We'll be talking about it later. Wonderful. Thank you for that. So, from your experienced hand, the term fostering and how you built this 30,000 people organization, it really helps us to understand. Thank you.
So as an organization, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, they were the difficult time, right? Post-pandemic, what we realized was we had 70% new workforce in the organization. And we never even realized it, the way we went about hiring people, and then someday we wake up and see that 70% of our workforce is new. And initially, pre-pandemic, the way we used to hire people was mostly based on the culture fit. Skills, of course, were there, but skills were not given so much of importance because Hexaware as a company, we had a certain culture. And if a candidate fitted into that culture, we hired them, right? Be it at any position. Now that went for a toss, went out of the window post-pandemic, right? We cannot inculcate those kind of culture training or culture building unless people come to office, right? So we thought of empowering them, and we tried, and we had a scattered workforce across the country. And we knew these guys are not going to come back to office in the near future. So we thought we'll take Hexaware to their locations and build communities in their town, cities, wherever they are. Right, so we had an initiative, something called as Hexaware in your hometown. So if it is, say, Hubli, there is a big bunch of guys sitting in Hubli, the entire senior management team would travel to Hubli, say once in a quarter or once in 6 months, have a town hall, meet with the families of the employees, meet the employees, try to build that kind of a community there in that locality. And as days went by, once in 6 months or once in a quarter, we try to kind of build up offices in those cities. That's one. Second, what we thought was for empowerment, we started a program, something called as OYG. Very simple, own your game. Right? As a company, where we are used to sending reminders, right? Calling up people to attend meetings, we thought, let's get away with that. Let's build a culture of sending no reminders at all. And just the employees have to own up their game, right? If they did it, they did it. If they don't do it, there's a penalty to it, right? That was one kind of a culture and community that we're trying to build in. The third community was a kind of innovators community, right? So that is something that we looked at. Normally, every company, be it IT or be it manufacturing, be it any sector, you have a R&D division or you have an innovation team, right? Where you have the cream de la cream of the technologists working in that. So we thought instead of having a 15-member or 20-member innovators team, why not make 30,000 employees as innovators? Right? So we kind of welcomed ideas, we kind of welcomed new propositions from every employee. Anybody can, there's an app that we built, anybody can build that, can send their ideas and suggestions. If it's accepted, they're rewarded. Right? Even if it's not accepted, still, we went ahead and tried implementing it. So that is another big innovators community that we built within the organization. So these are three key initiatives that we took, from my experience that I can share.
Thank you, sir. Very, insightful, and the percolation seems to be a biggest challenge, in all these things that you're talking about, OIG, the innovator and philosophy across the employee base, amazing, amazing. The magnitude of, what inputs you can get and decipher, filter, and, interpret that into action points. That is a humongous task, and kudos to you and team, right? While all these things are happening, we all go back to our school days, college days, right from the front benchers to the last benchers. The puzzle always used to be what? What was the puzzle in our school, college days? Forget about Valentine's Day, giving roses. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something that always used to be. Right? Macha, he doesn't come to class, yaar. He bunks. But how did he score 80%, yaar? Right? The numbers. Marks pe numbers, running race pe numbers, culturals pe numbers, everywhere. Take job. The CEO doesn't allow us to keep quiet. Pehla number lega, what is your offer to joiner ratio? What is your attrition? What is the percentage that Ravi's company is giving in terms of salary? These are all the puzzle. Do we or not? You have to be interactive. Do we or not? Jor say. Thank you. The reason why I told you this is we have to be loud. Why? There is one great saying by a management guru. He says, what gets measured? What's the second line? Gets done. Who's that? Who wrote it? Who said it? Peter Drucker. Very clear. What gets measured gets done. Let's give her a big hand because rarely we read numbers. So goes with our child school admission. So goes for me and him because we go to the doctor post 50. भैया sugar level क्या है? BP level क्या है? Metrics. What gets measured? Numbers are very important. The next puzzle that we are talking is about how to measure employee engagement at workplace. This is a very big puzzle. There are three different generations seated here, and we will start this time with middle-aged guy who is neither this side nor that side, you know. So Karthik will give an insight about what is his thought on metrics. How do we measure employee engagement, which is very vital because all that we have attrition. When I look at today, I wrote a rebel post in LinkedIn against someone telling that there are two lesser mortals in the company. Who are those in attrition report? Number one, manager. Number two, compensation, right? Which is false. So we will now get to certain out of heart talk by Karthik on metrics for employee engagement.
See, I see it from two perspectives. One is what is being on the face and what is off the face, what is formal and what is informal. All of us, I'm sure, in our organizations, we roll out the engagement surveys. Okay, new joiners, if it is in first 12 months or 24 months, okay, every 3 months, 45 days, 60 days, we tend to get the feedback. Okay, trust me, if anybody is on the left-hand side of the scoring, we say it's confidential, no, this information will not be shared with anybody. But net, somebody is monitoring it, and technically they'll be called for a discussion, tell us what's the problem. Now that guy is in the radar. So now that creates a problem. Now you hire a third party organization who drives your employee engagement. Even then, is the employee having a trust on that employee engagement survey itself? Because there is a fear factor. If I don't give my scores properly, okay, if I give something inappropriate, somebody triggers this, and it can, now they will start doing the post-mortem of that. Because of the fear factor, they tend to put the right hand side. Only brave, some of them want to take that risk and put it on the left hand side. Same, this is on the formal way, but trust me, I don't genuinely believe that I need an employee engagement if I can engage with the people on a regular basis. When I say regular basis, 5 minutes having a conversation with your team member, or probably in a week having a 30 minutes conversation with your team member. Don't do it to the entire organization. Start with your team member first. Just talk about nothing to do with the work. Okay? Find out what is their passion, what is their purpose. Now, if they are working after 9 hours, now first thing I ask my team member, what is that holding you back to work after 9 hours? Start pushing them, nudging them, and just ask them how they spend their time beyond their work. At least now I encourage my team to write, I encourage my team to read, and because we are in the learning and development team. So when we don't be ahead of it, it doesn't make sense. Secondly, when also when you're talking to the employees, now my team members do the training programs with the participants, okay, or when I connect with the leaders, with the board, or with the participants, we try to understand the business, and we try and understand the employee, what is the pulse of them, okay, because we are completely neutral, so they don't have any fear factor. And what happens is, when we, during the training program, I can extract as much information as possible from each of them, because I come with a business HR mindset too. So the waterfall information is there. Infuse it like in anesthesia into the business or to the management, and tell the people that this is what the business case studies are. Informally, lot of people during the coffee or during the smoke or those interactions will be promisingly very enriching. And even in the Teams you do it, or in the Zoom you do it. Having that informal conversations are promising. This genuinely formal surveys won't genuinely give you results. Classic example now, when an organization releases the employee survey, first thing that comes across is, okay, your function has not done much, many people not participated, push it and make it mandatory. Now, it's an employee choice. Then why are you making it mandatory and compulsory? Okay, so you're compelling to somebody to do it to show, see, this time our engagement ratio has been 90%. Okay, last year it was 70%, now we brought it to 90%, but it is out of compulsion, not out of choice. So informal is always welcoming.
Thank you. I think we are running out of time. Maybe I'll move into the next and the last question, which talks about how can analytics enhance employee engagement. I'll start it with Stanley, then move into Richard.
Yeah, probably I'm a bit old school. So initially, when we started, when we actually have to measure employee engagement with metrics, we used to always have a face-to-face conversation with the employees. That used to be there, right? And we say, okay, I met X number of employees, and this is kind of engagement ratio, and so many other analytics that we used to do it. But I think post-pandemic, we have gone into a mode like we have kind of dropped the entire employee survey jargon and the employee survey exercise. So not what we have done is we have kind of engaged with the chatbot, and that chatbot engages with the employee. So there's no dependency. They don't have the suspicion of saying somebody is monitoring me, right? And this chatbot talks to the employee at different milestones of the employee's life, right? The organization. And when that happens, you get a genuine kind of a feedback. And we work on those kind of metrics. And then those kind of metrics, when we analyze and we put them under different buckets and then try to do some intervention programs there, I think that, to my knowledge and through my experience, I can say that's one of the best ways to kind of make use of analytics into the employee engagement sphere.
Thank you, Richa.
Yeah. So before I move on to analytics, I think just for us to understand measurement of engagement, right? And we were just discussing that. I think for us, it's been very important to understand what frameworks we want to use to measure engagement, first of all, right? And one of the frameworks that we've always gone back to pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, I think the relevance of the framework has been very high, has been one of the Gallup frameworks that we use, which is the 3S, we call it the 3S model, right? Which stands for say, stay, and strive. So what does the employee say about you as an organization when they meet their friends and families, right? So it's essentially called a net promoter score, right? When you talk customer language. But what is your employee promoter score? That is very crucial to measure engagement. Is that high? If that is high, that's a great indicator of engagement. The other aspect is, of course, stay. How long do they think they're going to stay with you, right? What is the duration they think, they're sure in their mind they're going to stay with you? So that's the second part of it. And strive is really performance related, right? How much are they willing to contribute and make an impact to the organization? So if you're able to measure these three aspects in different forms, in different ways, your ability to measure engagement accurately as much as possible is very high. So that's part one. Part two, how much do we measure? How do we use data analytics? I think Stanley just mentioned as well. I don't think it's anymore about annual employee satisfaction surveys. I think there are past, absolutely. I think Karthik also mentioned, right? It's sort of losing its relevance completely. What we want to do is do a regular check-in, regular processes at regular intervals, milestones. Again, Stanley mentioned that. And at these milestones, again, gauging whether your employee is engaged, or are you seeing a dip in a certain cohort, and then really deep diving into what could be the reasons for it. And the third part of it is really using more and more analytics, right? How do you use analytics? And there are various dimensions to it. One is, of course, what kind of HCM solutions you want to adopt as an organization. How evolved are your HCM solutions? Because they can really help you streamline a lot of analytics, right? There's a lot of data out there, but how much can you use that HCM? And of course, there is always a factor of budgets and cost and all of that comes into organizations. So that is crucial for analytics. And the second part of it is really seeing, how much of that data coming from your HCM through your analytics, can you push it back into business? in the form of insights, in the form of dashboards, right? Because today, I think Dr. Ram started with that, right? What gets measured gets done. So the more you talk numbers as an HR person, the more people hear you out, right? So that's extremely critical. And the last part is AI. It's all around us, and it's going to take over very soon, right? That's really where it's heading. So I think tech, AI are going to be allies to HR. That's how I see it clearly. And from an AI standpoint, whether it is chatbots, whether it is a 247 assistance partner, whether it is multilingual support, the possibilities are endless, honestly. So it's really out there for us to explore what technology can do with us with HR teams.
Sure. Thank you, all of you. I think wonderful insights.
Can I just add a point? Because we are talking about analytics, okay, let us look the analytics from a fear factor or from a hope. Is it a post-mortem that you want to do, or do you want to do something very progressive? Unfortunately, most of the times we work on the Excel sheets, we do the presentations, present to the leaders, all the post-mortem data. It has no value anymore. We need to know how much of emotions you want to put on the data analytics, and if it is progressive and hope, it is always promising. That's where there is a book called how you measure your life. If you want, please read it. It's a simple one. One of the things it brings across is fear and the hope.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Wonderful. I think, from, data insights, dashboards, AI coming in, you finally went back to a book. That's very important because Peter Sinjay, way back when he wrote his book, right, The Dance of Change, which he also, implemented and practiced like a Bible, says that the learning curve is very important, and for the learning curve, data insights help a lot. Thank you all for the wonderful insights and thoughts. I'm sure all of us are benefited out of it. I think I will take just 2 minutes. Do I have? We welcome questions from the audience here, and I mean the HR mavericks who are all seated here. We are happy to tinkle ourselves with your questions. Thank you.
Hi. My question, I completely agree with Richa when she says that, post-pandemic flexibility is number one ask. And when Karthik says that, human touch is very important. So how to strike a balance, especially for remote or people who are working in hybrid? Because, for webinars, people just log in and do their work. So how to strike a balance between for engagement for those employees and the personal touch and bring about the personal touch?
That's a large part of the puzzle, right, that we're all trying to crack at this point of time. But I think it's important to figure out, firstly, as an organization, what does the organization think is the right level of hybrid or remote for you, right? From when I say you as an organization, what works for the organization? Once that is sort of understood, looking at your productivity reports and various other matrices that you might be tracking on the performance side, how do you really use that information to ensure that you bring that in back into the employees' flexibility schedules to build that balance, right? So it's going to be important to look at data, look at productivity, look at different matrices, and bring that back to see how do you balance it out with whether it's a 2-day in office versus a 3-day at home sort of model that works. How much of what kind of projects require in-office presence versus what can be done at home because you don't see a productivity dip. So it will require a whole lot of information, data gathering before you really crack this code for yourself.
Something which I follow very religiously is trust but check. Okay, I trust the employee. I give a benefit of doubt, but I constantly check. How do I check? I don't need to check with the matrix. Okay, all I need to do is spending some time. I don't need to spend the time directly with the person. You have different people across the hierarchy. Now, in the business, if I talk to the leaders across the hierarchy, are they in constant touch with the employee? Whether they are in the office, but the manager is working from home, still has no value. Until unless both of them are co-located in the office, then it makes a merit that at least there's a human touch. So now constantly when we go on the floor and talk to the people, that is when I say on the floor, even over the teams or whether it's on the workplace, do managers talk to their employees? If they are talking, what are they talking on? If they are just talking on the work, then it's more like we are behaving like a robotics. If you're beyond the work, if you're talking, somewhere the level of deeper engagements becoming more prominent. Because today, like flexibility, mental health is becoming a more high demanding, influential, not well-being about it anymore. So that is where it's very important.
Decentralization of engagement within teams, you give ownership to the team leaders, but they're like how we will strike a balance between the person being engaged within the team or with the organization culture. It can be that small groups will be formed and the person is so much engaged in team, sometimes a leader leaves and posts the whole team. Now that engagement, how to ensure that it is with organization and not with the leader, or
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, decentralizing engagement works, but if the leader leaves, then what do you do with that void? How do you, and secondly, how do you bring them closer to org level engagement rather than? So I think it's a step function process where decentralizing is not necessarily about isolating the engagement process. When I'm talking about decentralizing, I also mean decentralizing the responsibility of integration or decentralizing your role of influence. What that means is that if I have a X event running, my role is to tell Y manager of team, whatever, that listen, I think this is going to be fun. I'm going to leave it up to you to make sure that people who wish to attend in your team are excited by this. And so now I'm giving them ownership, and they are bringing their team to the floor or to the digital floor for that specific event. And so it's kind of on two levels where one, you ensure that at least people feel a sense of belonging within their team. So you drive engagement on a team level and you drive managers to create that on a team level. But two, you also couple that and marry that with organizational engagement activities, which is also handed a responsibility to the manager to say, bring them over. And again, to Karthik's point, not forcefully. Like I was mentioning, being very respectful about the fact that there will be people who are working remotely because they prefer to be introverted, they prefer to stay by themselves. Um, and so respect that, and for everyone else, have a reasonable bar in your head, a benchmark in your head, that even 50% of your team comes in, that's a good enough number to have. And so own it, drive the excitement, and bring them to the floor. So that way you're not isolating the engagement process, but you are decentralizing the idea of excitement and influence and inspiration about that specific event. I hope that answers your question.
So I want to ask you, the upcoming challenge that we are coming up with in the industry from the HR point of view is diversity, inclusion, and equality. Equity, sorry. So basically, I want to understand, is that also going to become a part of employee engagement, or is it something that is, how is it going to be inclusive? So how is DEI going to play a huge role into employee engagement?
So in my point of view, it becomes a very critical factor. It is not anymore the diversity and inclusion. In diversity, there is a multi-layers of diversity which is there. Equity again has a multi-layers equity and inclusion too. And this is from top to down. Okay, entire cultural change is extremely essential. If that doesn't happen, whichever the organization captures it, takes the advantage and starts thinking out of the box, they'll be the market leaders. Otherwise, they'll be evaporated very fast. And for that, learning interventions are extremely important, and awareness across the organizations are critical. And we shouldn't be doing something like this in a monologue. Okay, it's like then it becomes very boring. The Because it's all about the change in the mindset. We don't acknowledge that, then it gets diluted.
So do you think the artificial intelligence that we are moving on to from post-pandemic to pandemic, and now we are moving on to artificial intelligence, do you realistically think it's going to change the human brains, because it's going to be like diversity is like a part of it, diversified culture. So employee engagement will be like what? I mean, do you understand?
So I'll put it across in this way. See, while I encourage technologies overwhelmingly getting introduced into every organization, artificial intelligence, in my point of view, is overhyped, and it has gone into it has its own hallucination. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, sorry to use this terminology, is talks about AI, artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, and everything, but it has a life cycle very small. Okay, so end of the day, because we are dealing with humans, okay, and we can't artificially deal with the humans. It can give certain information, but it can't resolve the issues, especially on the DEI. It needs out of the box thinking, and we need to study DEI, what is applicable in, let's say, in US or in India. In India itself, what applicable in different state to different state is completely dynamic. And you're talking about different generations. You talk about our own dress codes over here. Okay, so you will see a different pattern that is coming now. There's no disparity. How do you see it create really makes a main difference? You want to add?
A very, interesting question I want to share here. I mean, fact. 2002, when I went to IIT Mumbai to hire people, the diversity was just about 1.5 to 2%. Last year, my son got admitted to IIT Chennai. There were totally 1,220 students, of which 220 students were diversity. Right? This is one point what you are. So there's a grassroots change in the way people are thinking. They want the girl children to be educated. That is, I'm talking about the source part. If you look at the data of the industry, engineering stream, less number of people are available. If you go to a BPO or in a company like Biocon, where we have pharmacology and stats and lab technicians, we had something like 38% in the diversity stream. So two different data points. The third one is there is an entire need, top-down percolation from the government of India, which under the name of Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Registry of Companies have mandated that there has to be higher quota to be given, one seat mandated in boards, as well as they are thriving. I don't know how many of you give this report to Government of Karnataka, the Labor Department. They ask for diversity report. What has been your diversity report? Of course, they may not act or they may act, but there is a significant and humongous effort to increase that number to 25 across the platform. Yes, this is the data facts. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I'll quickly answer in brief. Is DEI important? It is extremely critical, right? And again, it is going back to the multi-generational workforce that we are having and the kind of needs they have. I think previously the thought was that, communication, supervisors, all of that builds employee connect with the organization. They still remain as crucial, but elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion become very critical to connect with employees today, right? So it is going to become more and more critical. The other element is diversity in various forms, right? So one aspect is gender diversity that Dr. Ram just spoke about, but the LGBTQ group, how do we really engage with them? How do we really build organizations that are able to work closely with them, have them be a part of the organization is going to be very critical in the future.
All right. Thank you so much. So next we have something called CEO Talks, that is with two of the most successful entrepreneurs of our country.
All right, everybody, how comfortable are you after the session? Feeling relaxed? Please raise hand if you do. Yeah, we might bore you. Nobody wants to listen to the CEOs nowadays, that's how it works. So, all right, so before we go about having the conversation, I'll set a quick context of what we're going to discuss. So the two parameters that we are taking into consideration, which should make sense to the community here. One is the values and the missions of the organization. So, a lot of times we try to, we as HR, we feel that the values and the mission is something which is, if you go from function to function, manage all the different stakeholders, it's not consistent in the organization. So what's the CEO way of looking at it? And, that is something that we're going to have a discussion on. The second aspect is on the decision making while all the different stakeholders into the business are not aligning. So I'll go about asking the first question to you, Nikunj. So Chai Point is known for its, the work that you have done. And in the last event that I met Amulik, he was talking about chai, coffee, and culture. These are three aspects on which actually the Chai Point operates today. So before I ask you the question, let me ask everybody, how many of you are chai fans here? All right. Okay. How many of coffee? And how many of you think culture is essential for working wherever you are? All right. So yeah, essentially, like all three, chai, coffee, culture, it's just 3C, and that's what Chai Point is aiming at. So my first question to you, Nikunj, is that, in the, if you look at it like this, the entire challenge of establishing a value chain inside the organization where everybody connects to the value that the leadership is imbibing. How do you ensure that all the stakeholders are, paying attention to that? And then how do you make sure that, everybody is embodying that into day-to-day life while it happens?
Cool. First of all, good evening, everyone. Chai Point is definitely chai, coffee culture. But if you look at the country, right, chai is also community. Because all of us as Indians, when we want to take a break, we typically go down, have a chai, and whatever else. But chai is really what brings, and it won't be exaggeration to say it brings the country together, right? We have 22 languages, but we love our chai. So yeah, chai is culture, but chai is also community. To answer your question, how do you bring people together? I'm told Nandan Nilekani used to say that companies are not built in formal meetings. They're built in corridors and pantries, right? So, how many of us have experienced, a colleague that seemed difficult on an email, and there's email exchange happening, but when we actually interacted with the person, the guy actually turned out to be okay. How many of you had that experience? So that's how companies are built. Companies are not built in formal meetings. Companies are not built over emails. Companies are built when the people in the organization get to know each other. And in that getting to know each other, they get to a common way of working. That's culture really, right? How does a company operate? And to operate, how do you align? So, yeah, that's chai, coffee, and culture really.
All right. So a lot of times, like if you look at it, when organizations start going up, right, these values and mission, again, every silo gets its own value of operating. The sales head will go about talking about his, looking at the information from his standpoint. You go to another function, it happens the same. So a lot of people over here, like most of the people over here, come from HR community, which is kind of a moderating agency for all these stakeholders inside the organization. So any hacks for these people of how to bring in the business table a little more sincere towards the people aspirations, or the
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I've done this over years. I used to be a consultant, right? So why do people call in consultants? People call in consultants because they have an emotionless, objective view to a problem. The same sort of aspect applies to managing conflicts, difference in point of views. When you take the person and the emotion out of the equation and you look at the problem in terms of what is the right way to look at the problem, what are the underlying operating principles to take the right decision, what is the algorithm to take the right decision, then you focus everybody away from the individual and the subjective behavior to what are the principles that should be used to look at the problem and to solve the problem. And through that, you also codify a way of working. I'll give you a simple example. Our business is a lot about capital allocation. We open stores as one of the areas where we allocate capital. Our stores are expensive. Stores cost a lot of money. Now, the person who identifies a property, he'll say fantastic property, right? The person who's in finance approving the property will say not approved. Now, how do you decide who's right? Now, every time when you get into a conversation and look at each transaction, you will never resolve the conflict. But what we've done as an example is we've created algorithms for approving capital allocation. So one of the algorithms is that the rent to revenue ratio should be a certain percentage. If it is passing the threshold, it gets approved. If it's not passing the threshold, it doesn't get approved. So you remove the subjectivity, and most decisions are rule based. I mean, what's AI end of the day? It's capturing those rules. So if you're able to bring the principles and the rules to the 10 or 12 things that we do on a repeated basis, you remove the subjectivity. That's what we've done at SharePoint.
That was quite an insight. So, Karthik, my next question is to you. Now, Springworks seems to be an organization which has a very clear mission where you're heading. So, could you share the mission with the community here first, and then if you could explain that, how do you make sure that this vision and the mission that you are pursuing, how everybody in the organization is embodying it?
Sure. So before that, I'll just set some context. So we are around 250 odd people spread across 85, 95, different cities. We don't have a physical office. We literally have a virtual WeWork address, and we've been in the business for almost 9 years now. Profitable, bootstrapped, sustainable. We build, we help companies with background verification and employee engagement. So our mission, is nothing but build a category-defining culture. So we ourselves need to build that culture first, and then help our clients and customers, everyone here, HRs, do that for their own companies, right? So a bunch of we've 10 different values, which is like in our offer letter, in our onboarding document. It's linked to our recognitions, linked to our performance reviews. You literally get rated, or get bonus points for those values, right? So one of the values is over communication. Err on the side of over communication. Very, very important and remote. You're not going to be able to get on a meeting every time you have a question. If you're spending 4 hours in meetings per day, then that means you're not doing your job well, right? Unless you are in sales or customer success. So how do you document every small thing very well? How can you set this? How can you have an onboarding document? How can you have a training document? How can you have a FAQ document? Right? How can you document every thing so well, especially from the HR perspective, right? I'm a software engineer myself, so in engineering, the principle is do not repeat yourself. You write a piece of code once and you call that function multiple times. I think in HR is the complete opposite. You repeat the same thing multiple times, even if you're sending, like right now we're sending Diwali gifts out, right? You have to send, it's like something as simple as that. You would expect everyone will just fill it up on the first day, right? But that never happens, right? You ask any HR, how many times you have to send that out to get 100% response rate, and even after that they'll be like, oh no, I missed the deadline, I was on an important meeting, I was on sick leave, can you please extend it for another 6 hours, right? So small things, I think, how do you make sure you repeat it multiple times? You use all the different channels. You do it through managers, you do it in emails, using platforms like Keka, Slack, we use Slack, things like that, right? So that's one value. Another example is execution is the only metric, right? So what that means is you got in a project, for say something like Diwali gifts, for that example, it only stops, it only is finished when you've actually sent out the gifts, right? It's not just collecting the addresses or filling up a survey, but it's only done when the people have actually received and you've concluded, paid the bills, gotten some social media love from it, gotten some employer branding, right? So doing end to end is very, very important, especially more in a remote setting, because as he was mentioning, right, we don't have the luxury of an inter-person connect, right? We can't go out and say, let's go have chai, right? That is not happening, right? So you have to, when you don't have that, you have to focus a lot more on your communication. You have to focus a lot more on, how many times you communicate, how do you, what do you mention, make sure you don't have any questions, right? Like, for this Diwali example, we said, can everyone fill up the addresses in this form? First question, which came up was, why can't you collect the address from our, offer letter? Or from the HR. It's very natural, clear question. So as an HR, we could have said, no, current addresses are generally not updated in HRIS, so we would request you to fill that. The small things I think are important to over communicate and explain, and that's where the execution, ownership, these type of values are very important, and you have to keep on repeating. I think that's the only answer, right? Across the board, across the different recognitions, performance, your messages. We have a Slack bot. Every time it sees execution is the only metric, it takes that and tells you what the value is all about with some examples as well.
Perfect. So, in my opinion, if you guys look at it, right, any organization out there has a certain purpose of being there. Now, that purpose could be simple, maybe as simple as delivering a chai to a chai lover, to a very complex purpose like colonizing the Mars, right? Greater than humanity purpose. Now, while the organization has a purpose, the person who's coming into the organization also has a certain purpose of coming to the work. It could be as simple as making money or maybe finding growth or sustainability. So, like this gap in aspirations is where, a lot of times, a lot of problems are, arriving to. So, we have to constantly make sure that there is a certain bridge between these aspirations of the organization and the people. We cannot completely, very recently I was talking to one of the aircraft maintenance engineering company. So the aircraft maintenance engineers that they used to that are joining that organization, they are largely they, by the time they come and join, it is 31 or 32 years of age they are. So they're like, when the leaders are exercising their vision and purpose, they really don't care about it. They have their own needs. They need to pay off the loan that they have. They need to get married in life, and that's the vision and the mission. So a lot of times, these visions and missions are also required to be moderated, keeping the lower bench in mind, the base of the pyramid in mind. So know the stakeholders, know the language that the stakeholders are speaking, and then eventually contributing and making that reach is where I think HRs can help a lot to the leaders. So coming to the next question, on the decision making part, where like if you look at it again, I have been emphasizing on it that all stakeholders have their own set of plans. Some of them are, some of the functions will always be driving growth for the organization, while the others are just operational bench, right? In such scenario, Nikunj, according to you, have you seen any of the scenarios where there is a dissent between the stakeholders, and then as a leader, how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, there is always asymmetry in terms of the functional goal that you're pursuing, and any functional person is looking at it from his lens, and therefore, the perspective changes, and that creates different ways of looking at things, and that creates that gap. So yeah, the gap is there. As I said earlier, that the way, at least in Chai Point, we've looked at addressing different perspectives is to look at the problem as a whole, and instead of looking at an individual view, look at the problem as a whole, and really break down the problem into what are the operating principles behind solving that problem. And once you focus on what are the principles on which we will look at this problem, make that into a code, into an algorithm, and then you share it with the team. That way you take away the person out of the equation and you focus on the problem. You break the problem down into what are the values that as an organization we will bring to the table to solve that problem. The same problem can be solved in multiple ways, depending on the values of the organization. Somebody can drive profitability, somebody can drive market share basis, price optimization. There are different ways to solve a problem, right? Somebody can say that I just want to capture market share, I don't care about profitability, so on and so forth. So you agree on first what are the principles that are important to us as an organization to look at a type of a problem. Once you align everybody that these are the principles, then you lay down the algorithm that, okay, if these are the principles, how do the different principles stitch together in a form of an algorithm, and then you get everybody aligned on the table.
I agree to that. Like, let's say these principles are basically what kind of define the behaviors of how people are going to interact internally or outside. So one more question, Nikunj, over here. As you are an acting CFO for Chai Point, where do you see in this entire pyramid, where does the investor fit? Is there any leverage? Because a lot of times, like this is something which a lot of people over here are from startup community, funded recently or going to get funded in future. There is always a fear about an investor coming in and taking the plans for a toss. So how do you look at it, and what is the degree of challenge over there, that comes to you as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are in a capitalistic society where investor is an important part of the capitalistic ecosystem. So you can't hope to build a business in today's uh, environment without capital. You need capital, and therefore the investor is essential. How do you manage an investor in terms of he or she not hijacking your agenda? I think, frankly, you have to be first clear what is your goal. It's the same thing whether you're managing an employee or you're managing an investor. You have to align where are you headed and what are the values that you will stick to in heading there. It's the same thing that if you want to drive a certain sales agenda, right? Will you compromise profit just to get market share? Is that something you want to do? And then is that what the investor wants to do then? So it's all about aligning the ways to get to where you want to get to. And if you're clear that how you will get to where you want to get to and what that's what you committed to your investor, I think most investors take the lead of the management team. I don't think I have come across investors who say that I know this better than you and do it my way. So it's actually a fairly manageable thing. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, largely a fear inside the head, not really something to worry about. It's all about creating that alignment between all the stakeholders, and investor is another stakeholder if you look at it. So Karthik, coming to you, you were saying 250 people already in the organization, and one of the recent communications that I had with people inside the organization, the average age is pretty low. Somewhere close to 26 years. Now the youth, the Gen Z, millennials, whatever we call them, and all of them they're jumpy in nature, and the loyalty is a little low. So in such a scenario, how do you make sure that the decision making still stands? Because I think they don't listen. That has been my experience so far.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is today's generation. I'm whatever 33 years old, so today's generation expects an answer, expects a why for everything, right? They want to know, okay, why was this decision taken? What was the rationale behind it? And they want that. Sometimes when the decision is communicated, they want to know the reasoning behind it. They want to know what are the different options again explore, right? So, and taking this Diwali gift as an example, right? It's something where every single person has an opinion. Someone wants a watch, someone wants a sweet box, someone wants fancy what do you call these lights, right? Someone wants a candle. It's like every single person has has ideas and ways to do it, right? But I think obviously that's not possible as an HR, right? It's a nightmare from deciding, okay, these 10 people want an electronic item, these 10 people want sweet box, these 10 people want kajus and whatever, right? So how do you get everyone on the same page? Is explaining, okay, we are going to work with one vendor because of logistics. We are going to be sticking to two options maybe because getting minimum order quantity and pricing and other things. And the reason to work with this vendor is because we have a prior relationship, they're easy to work with, etc., etc., right? So I think explaining that why is very, very, very important, right? Another recent example was we were selling an underperforming asset, which is one of our products, where everyone had spent in a lot of time building that, so there was love for it and all of those things, and there were mixed opinions. Should we sell it? Should we not put it on the market? Should we keep it? Should we try to grow it? Stuff like that, right? I think that's always there. So, and as Nukinj was saying, then you have to come back to your principles. Okay, why did we start this? What is the goal of starting behind this new product, right? Are we achieving those goals? If not, then you have to be objective, right? It's it's not easy to let go of something, so but at that time you have to be objective and you have to decide, this is why we started. It's not happening, it's not working out for whatever reason, let's sell. And then you actually explain that entire reasoning to the company or to everyone. I think people appreciate that a lot, right? I think people want to be involved in the decision making process. Like offsite as an example, we did an offsite in Jaipur recently where we had some 150 odd people come in, right? deciding the location itself, you can't be 100% democratic, because from an HR's perspective, that'll be a nightmare. But you can at least take in inputs. And then people like, okay, why did you not, do whatever, Shimla, right? Then you explain, right? We need to do a city which has flight connectivity, for example, right? We want to do a place where the weather is good. We want to do a place where there is something to see outside of the hotel, right? So I think explaining those things and people actually understand, oh wow, they've actually thought through all of this. You will see higher participation. You will see faster response rate. You will see higher satisfaction. People actually go out and tell their friends and all of that, right? I think those are it's very important. It takes you whatever 15-20 minutes extra to craft, and write that message, but goes a long way in explaining and building that empathy. And all the more important to do it in a remote team where you can't just walk up to the HR or walk up to the CEO and ask, okay, why are we not doing this? Why are we not doing it in Goa, or etc. Right? Things like that.
Great. All right. So those are my questions. Anybody from the audience? Any questions for the leaders?
So I'll keep it a bit far away. You were talking about specifically Diwali gifts, right? This is a question to all the CEOs. I'm somebody who's been bred by a baby boomer when I joined one of the big fours, and then I've been working 66% till now with startups, like some of the big startups. My question to all the CEOs, CTOs is, when you organize these hackathons, how many times have you thought, should we pick up an HR issue, an HR operational issue, and try to solve for it with technology? For example, the Diwali gifts, your HRIMS is already in place. You know that the current addresses are either updated, not updated. How many times have you picked up and said, hey, let me try pulling this into a system where people, the moment they log in with their particular email ID of the company, the address automatically generates where the employee says yes or no to the address, and if they say no, they can enter a new address, instead of actually asking them to enter the entire address, right? Because it's an operational hassle for me. How many times have we thought of creating a chat bot within the organization which could actually answer questions from your employee handbook? It is already there. These are very operational stuff that you can do. Do the technology focused CEOs and CTOs think that operational work can be minimalized from an HR perspective if we utilize our internal technology to solve them? Have you even considered or looked at this?
So, Karthik, you are quite an hackathon champion in your career. I would ask you to.
Sure, yeah. I think it's a very valid question. And, to your point, sadly, I think a lot of hackathons are not focused on solving internal challenges. They're always focused on outward challenges, which is what kind of gets the top line. But at least at Springworks, one of the bots which we had built as a leave bot. We use Keka as our HRMS. So it looks at every time there's someone who's applied for a leave, on that day it will kind of post in Slack, the so-and-so person's on a casual leave or whatever type of leave, gets to notify all your teammates that this person's on leave, right? Or someone applies for a second half leave, and was on a sick leave, right? So same thing happens. So we've done these type of things a lot. And then I think to your question about the HR handbook, so we actually have that as well, right? So you ingest the handbook and you have we call it Albus. You're able to ask any questions around anything around your HR policies, employee handbooks, leaves, how do I add my spouse to my insurance, stuff like that. All of that is able to answer. So I think a lot of it can be solved, but at the same time, HR systems sadly have not seen a lot of innovation. And many of them are very closed, right? If you see that in the marketing or in the the sales world, everything is by default all open. Everything has APIs, everything has widgets, everything works with each other. There is a Zapier for those things, but that's not true for the HR system, right? And maybe it's because the market is not that big, maybe because the customers are not very tech savvy, maybe it's something else. But I think that's changing. Nowadays, and taking Keka as example, Keka has a webhook. getting into a lot of technical details, so I'll take a pause. But Keka has these options where you can integrate, which is what we've done. So I think the new age HRIS, ATS systems are actually being very open in terms of integration. So I'm hoping that companies, when they do these hackathons, will actually build these pods. And recently, I was in SHRM and we had talked to this company, 50,000 people. I'm not going to name them, but in their hackathon, they actually built, 6-person team had built a voice bot where you could call a phone number and you could ask questions, anything around HR. And you could say, I'm not feeling well, I want to apply for a leave tomorrow. How do I do that, right? Literally in 5 different languages because they were across, 10 cities. And that's great because maybe the HR team was able to convince the founders to build for those things. And I think Gojek is also a very good example where they have done a lot of stuff internally to help, HRs or just the entire people ops function.
Thank you for answering that, but the proportion is really, really less. We at
Very
G2
less.
are also doing something, but the proportion is really less. For your question to why are the systems so closed, it's all personal data, it's called PII, and with so many acts coming into place, especially the DPDP Act, I think things are going to go more stringent. So let's look out for that.
All right, I think as long as the intent of well-being is there in the center, it's going to be okay. It's always going to be okay. So Nikunj, I'll ask you one last question before we wrap up. Everywhere I go, I find, everywhere that I've gone and I have tasted Chai Point's chai, it has been very consistent as a product. Gives me same experience everywhere. How do you ensure that? Because I think the kind of tea that you make, it changes when I go back to my home and I do it in my place. It's very different. How do you ensure that happens?
So those you used 2 words that are core to Chai Point, right? One is Chai Point everywhere. I mean, that's literally our strategy. If somebody asks us in one sentence, what are you after? Chai Point everywhere. Because chai is everywhere. How can we be everywhere as Chai Point? Consistency, yes, that's one of our core values internally. Quality, consistency, responsiveness, innovation. And that's really what we are solving for, right? I mean, how did this entire idea of brewing bots come about? It was simply that wherever you went, chai was being made by hand, besides hygiene and other issues. It is fundamentally solving for consistency. And that's the genesis of the brewing bots, where, literally as I tell my customers that even my 7-year-old daughter can now make chai, right? Because, it's literally pressing a button, and, pressing a button is not just one form of chai. You have masala chai, you have classic chai, you have ginger, you have cardamom, and then you have different cups. So depending on what you want to make and what's the quantity you want to make, you need to be consistent in the chemical process. Because chai is so pervasive to our society, we take chai for granted. But chai is actually the most complex, or one of the most complex food items or beverage items. It is a 5-step chemical process, right? There's milk, there's water, there's sugar, and you add something, and of course there's chai patti. How you sequence it, whether milk comes first, water comes first, does it come together? How many boils you have? At what boil do you add the second ingredient? Now imagine doing that manually, that at the 3rd boil, milk will come. At the 5th boil, the chai patti will come. Then all of it together will boil for another 2 times. It has to boil.
Machine out there has all this.
Yeah, so
figured in it.
that's, and you can customize it. Our classic chai is 3 boils. Our masala chai is 8 boils. But the boils also change with the quantity you're brewing. So all that is at the heart of our technology. So there's a proprietary technology that drives what you see as the brewing bots. There's a software that sits inside each machine. That software speaks to our software in the cloud, which has all the recipes. And literally you select what you want, you select the quantity, and the software then kicks in to make sure that each mechanical part in the brewing bot is doing things as per the standardized recipe.
So probably this news will be good for you. Last 4 months back, we did a survey, and looking at the amount of chai lovers that we had, we actually moved out of CCD and we moved to Chai Point in our organization, just to make sure that we have all the options of chai available inside the office. Right. So that sums it up, our session. Thank you very much to both the founders, and I think that's our exit.
Ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, please welcome Rohan.
Hello. Very good evening to everyone. Before I start, I just wanted to quickly do the formalities. Thank you, Keka and Rajneesh. I mean, they have been one of the best partners for us, and obviously, Mr. Damager here. Thanks for the introduction. Damager means Anmol. That's the new role which he's playing nowadays, Corporate Babaji, if you guys follow him. I think I just want to try and come across as somebody who can nudge a thought. Whatever the sessions which we could hear out, and I was also a participant like you all. I was also thinking from a perspective of HR that we talk about X, we talk about Y, we talk about Z, right? Thoughts are there, but when the thoughts come towards execution, slowly the executionary power of those thoughts are getting faded. I mean, HR goes and talks to a business head, HR goes and talks to the CTO, then the CTO goes and talks to the CEO, and slowly those pieces are getting scattered and a new version is coming up. But the biggest challenge for HRs, which I have personally, I have dealt with almost 5,000 plus HRs in last 1.5 years, obviously for building up the business around. And I represent OnSurety. So we basically are a InsurTech healthcare platform. The biggest thing which I could see, and whenever I could meet HR folks out of office, I mean, out of office in the sense just while walking out of office, understanding their pain. The biggest thing they always have been saying is that for us to articulate a solution to the top management, or else if I am not on the table of decision making, it becomes very difficult for us to try and push this to an execution stage. And that's where tech came in. From the time we talk about HR tech, like the players, Keka, I mean, it becomes very easy for you guys to try and have a vision about how a tech platform works. And that's where we also pitched in. Now, when I talk about tech, the biggest thing from tech for HR comes is why? Why do you want to bring this? A finance head, a CFO will come and say, boss, bill bahut zyada hai, aap ho na, aap hi karo. You should do it, yaar. You have such a big HR team. But the problem of healthcare, when it comes, healthcare always needs personalization. But what we could discover few years back, that's around 3.5, 4 years back, is that personalization is needed. And somebody spoke about everybody. I mean, I think Karthik was making a very valid point. Today, one employee wants a candle. One employee wants a dinner set. One employee wants something. One employee wants Ritz-Carlton buffet, right? So it's not about customization anymore. It's about personalization over customization. And that's where we thought, how would you try and bring and bridge that gap? We could build a platform which was empowering the employees. And that's where we could try and understand that HR pains were going away, because HR was always looked from a perspective of human ready. We always talk about, right? Human ready. Are we HRs here, right? We are HRs? HR is what? Bring it on. HR is, sorry? Painful. Any other synonyms of HR is what I'm looking for. Sorry? Ghosts. I would say HR, a human ready, a heart ready. Anything else? Hrithik Roshan, somebody said. Okay. Anything else? Any thought which you would have felt as an HR that I am HR? What else? Heartless? Thankless? From HR I am requesting, ma'am. From HR, can you make up something? Horse rider, fantastic. Anything else? Horse rider is a good one, actually. Huh? Hamesha right. There are synonyms around the way we execute, but one thing which I have always felt, and I just wanted to try and bring around a small quiz on this. So can we have a small, I just have 3 or 4 PPTs. It's not slides. I mean, something which I always felt was, are you HR? You are human ready? you're a horse rider, right? I wanted to know whether, are you health ready? The biggest thing was, are you health ready? An employee expects you, hello, it's 9 p.m. I need to talk to you. I have an emergency. Help me now. Now, if I put myself in your shoes, at 9 p.m. I'm watching Big Boss, and I'm expected to answer which hospital, what is my amount, how do I process this? The gap here which we could understand was that the employee is not empowered or educated about what it is, and whether he is enabled with that thing, what he is looking for. Somebody calls at 10:30 and says, I have my dad who has to be admitted. Can I have this treatment covered under this insurance? I mean, he doesn't know. It's a very basic thing. But for us, for somebody who has managed comp and benefit for a long time here in this hall, frankly, I mean, being very human here, while keeping the call, you would feel for that employee, but you would say, यार ये छोटी सी चीज भी याद नहीं है यार इसको. I have triggered mails on every Monday, yaar. 8 mails I have sent in last 8 weeks. Are you with me in this? होता है ना ऐसा? Yes, right? But the problem is, employee says, mail कब आया मैम? कौन सा मेल भेजा था आपने? Right? There are no mails. Boss, I am outside. You expect me to read those mails? No. That is where we thought then we need to try and empower the employees, and we could try and understand that there was certain basic information which the employee would want. Forget employees now for a minute. Forget employees. I'm talking about HRs. Small quiz. Are you health ready? I'm going to ask you. So I'll give you a minute or maximum 2. Let's take 2. Your HRs. HRs need more time there to think. I want you guys to take 2 minutes. Keep your mobile phone with you. Please use it. I don't want you to put it away, because that's one tech platform which you carry all the time, or else any other modes which you feel. I would want you to spend 2 minutes and scan this barcode, and in 2 minutes you have to enter the details which are gonna be around asked in that. This is on your table also, the barcode. If you're not able to scan this on the dangler, which is there, you can scan this. You have 2 minutes. Take your time. But I really wanted to understand the employee face of the HR first. Can we have the music a bit loud? It helps in going fast. I can see few of them are engrossed on their phone. Few of them are like, yaar, chalo, dekhte hain. Some of them are thinking, was it ready? Could have been ready. Please take your time. You can make calls. You can do whatever. I mean, whatever an employee does, just imagine yourself as an employee. 2 minutes, you're searching for some information. Some of them have completed the job. Side is busy. This table is done. All of them are busy. I can only see 5 of you sitting aram se, like with a confident face. Arey, I've done it. Are we good? Are we 120 seconds done? 2 minutes are done. So I think from mobiles, let's get back. Right? This was your emergency call. Right? Ashu, what's the number? 50. What's the number? Now the biggest problem is this. In this hall, if I count the number what he's saying, this counts to be around 22 to 25% of us. Now, the biggest thought which I want to nudge and really request, I really want to nudge this, that imagine yourself as your employee. and you do not have, as HR, you are not handy with it. You get a call from an employee is somebody who's like frustrated. He will have frustration towards you, not anyone else. He would think, why my HR is not able to help me out? But the problem here is, we want to look at things only from a perspective of ease at that time, with that speed. Today, the world is, all of us drive, most of us drive, right? When you're driving, the guy in the front is actually going to take a left. He just put the indicator, but still I am honking. Arey jana bhai, tu left jana. Arey baba, he has to have a way to go. But for us, it is push of a button. The thought of push of a button is something which we want to try and bring. And that's it. I just want to nudge this, represent onsurety. We work with 5,000 plus businesses in India. And I really request you to visit us. And if you feel that you need somebody from a thought process, from nudging something and trying to bring stability, that's something which, for employee experience, I request you to. These were the details which generally come across, and I think I would not want to call out this, I am the only one and all that, but I think we have tried building up a community of HRs who have enabled a push of a button for healthcare, and that's something which we have worked and believed in, and I'll keep looking forward to working for that. Thank you so much for your time. I hope it was meaningful to all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Keka. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that and highlighting the importance of participation as well, for that matter. So moving on, I would like to speak about something that is very close to our hearts, right? So this is the 14th leg of HR conclaves across the country that we are going around, right? And we had something called HR Catalyst. That is a virtual HR conference and one of the largest ones in the country with over 4,500 participants. So, and during this conference, we collected a lot of data, a lot of statistics, right? Ranging from, say, the HR operations that are present to the employees and their working scenarios in their companies. And today, we are launching that report that we have collected. So for that, I would like to invite on stage Siddharth Yadav, who is the backbone of our content team. Can we please have Siddharth on stage, guys?
Good evening, everyone. For the next 30 seconds, imagine me to be an HR in a new company in Bangalore, a fairly small one. I've got funding recently. I'm in expansion mode. Other business leaders sit for the discussion. They discuss something, and I'm apprised of what happened. I'm supposed to hire new people, set the HR processes, and also enable the older employees to adapt to this new reality. Here, I am a change manager. But what if I take charge? What if I steer my organization through the expansion? What if, instead of being a passive recipient of instructions, I become a proactive, credible activist? That's from being an HR as a change manager to an HR being a catalyst or an agent or enabler of change. Presenting to you HR's as Change Agents Report 2023. We compiled data for this report, as Nishat mentioned, through the HR Catalyst Summit, which happened in June. Fairly representative sample of around 2,000 unique respondents, both quantitative as well as qualitative data, and divided along 3 themes: technology, strategic HR, and workplace. These are the 3 contexts which could help you and your team to become agents of change. Close to 80% of the respondents are HR professionals, the remaining CEOs, directors, and founders. And there are interesting chapters in this report, like how to make work not suck, or why it pays to pay HRs more. You know, HRs have a multiplier effect in their organizations. Apart from being a descriptive report, this is also a prescriptive report. Few interesting highlights I'd like to mention. We discussed about the application of AI in HR. Most of the respondents believe AI is an ally of HR rather than being a threat of it. But there are ethical concerns that galore. Close to 90% believe there are ethical concerns of privacy, bias, and other concerns. I mean, this is a very sensitive topic, the topic of mass layoffs. So we asked people, who is responsible for layoffs? Is it the HR? Right? The HRs are usually the bulletproof jackets of CEOs and founders, willing to take the hit to convey the unfortunate news to the people. They are held responsible for the layoffs, but are they really to blame? Most of the people highlighted, most of the people said that it's a multitude of factors, The business leaders are responsible. HRs also, to some extent, are responsible. What did HRs do when the business decision of hiring those people was going on? Did they enable right forecasting? Interesting one. What causes burnout among HRs? Most people said it's HRs not being valued enough in the organization. Close to 40% believe that. And also, what contributes most to work fulfillment and excitement? 30% believe it's growth opportunities. So, I mean, these are few of the interesting insights in the report. But we don't want to stop there. We want to be prescriptive and, help HR professionals as well. So if you're planning to implement AI in HR at your organization, the report also suggests an AI in HR maturity model. This one you'll like, it's a fairly simple metaphor. We have a water bottle on our tables, right? So if we imagine every employee to be a water bottle, and the water to represent the stress level of that employee, if the water is up to the brim, it reaches the threshold, the stress could spill over and cause burnout. So the only way would be to release that stress. So we say, I'm feeling bottled up, because of stress. This model that you're seeing there, it talks about bottling down the stress, which means you create outlets at the below to release stress through different de-stressors. We have also suggested the previous slide. Yes. The HR burnout alert system. We talk about burnout of other people, other employees, but what about the burnout of HRs who carry the emotional labor of other people? If HR is there for employees, who is the HR of HRs? That is the question we need to ask. So the report talks about a burnout alert system, color-coded with signs, yellow being the least significant and red being, red warning. Another self-assessment tool to gauge well-being. Mr. Karthik was talking about well-being. This self-assessment model, which is there in the report, could be taken by any employee, and it gauges your well-being level across 4 parameters, right? This report is there at every table, by the way. There is a copy of this report at every table. You can have a look at it. You can download the report for free using the QR code there. All right, so today it's no more about profits alone. It's about a curious and stellar fusion of customer experience as well as employee experience. HRs is the only link between the two. They are the only people who can make that happen, right? They can embed this differentiator in the organizational DNA. So let's be agents of change, enablers of change. Let's stay ahead of the uncertainties which are coming to us and grab the opportunities which are being presented through these uncertainties. You can download the digital copy by scanning this code. If you're planning to implement any intervention in your organization, this report and the data presented here will help you present a stronger case. because we're talking about a data-driven approach, a business case for interventions. And if you have difficulty in downloading it, just reach out to any of the Keka representatives. We have the next edition of the HR Catalyst Summit, which is an online summit, going to take place on December 6th and 7th this year. And if you'd like to register for it, you can do it here. There will be speakers from Myntra, Mama Earth, Reliance Jio. So this is the code for that. As for the report, it's there at your table. You can have a look, and we could have a discussion on it as well. Okay, that's it from my side to you all. Over to you, Nishad.
Thank you, Siddharth. Can we give a round of applause to Siddharth?